Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. And been a little bit of a cold month here, but want to get back out here, exercise the lasers a little bit, get some more time in on the xTool P3. And as I mentioned in earlier videos, I've been trying to update some of the office decor at work with some of my more current interests. And that means making some fun laser cut projects in there. So I'm going to play around with xTool Studio. We're going to find a couple of projects that are in there that we can cut out on this laser. And we'll see how that comes together to help spruce up my office. So if you're interested in the xTool P3 and how it does this, or just want to hang out and see what this artwork comes out to be, stay tuned. I'm going to jump right into it. All right, we are here at the computer, and I am going to just jump into xTool Studio, and we're going to see what people have shared out there. They've kind of built out a nice ecosystem of projects that people can submit and either offer them up for free, or some they can actually ask for a payment for. So we're going to see what we can find that might be a little interesting in xTool Studio. So let's jump over there right now. All right, so when you open up xTool Studio, you've got kind of some of your recent projects. You might remember some of my Christmas ones that I've worked with. And then as you scroll down, they have some recommended projects, and a lot of the times these are going to be seasonal. As you see, here's some Valentine's Day style ones. We're definitely coming up on that holiday. And so you can go ahead and you can look at the trending, you can look at the recommended based on some of what you've done in the past. And if you come into view all, it is going to kind of give you just you can just view all sorts of different projects here. And so this is a nice way if you're needing some inspiration, needing some ideas, or just not feeling creative, want to do something quick. You can scroll through here and look. You can also do a search for things. So if we were looking for, say, a wall shelf, we could do that. And here it's gonna come up with a wall shelf, but maybe some different things that are, it's using some keywords and such. But we do have a decorative wall shelf here. You got a little newspaper rack there. Definitely some things that fit in there. Like any search engine, you're going to have to play around with the terminology you use to figure out what's best. But the other thing you can do is you can, if you come into one of these, let's just pick one of them. All right, let's say here you've got this wooden shelf, brackets for wall-mounted shelf. We got these laser cut brackets, and you want to save it for later. You can add to bookmarks. You click on that, it's going to add it into your bookmark section. And then you just come over here on the left, over on this side, click on bookmarks, and it's going to bring up all of the things that you have bookmarked in the past and you want to play with. So looking at this, I'd already gone through some, and one of my themes I like here in Minnesota is kind of the wolves. I did a whole thing a couple years ago on making a Minnesota themed wolf art. But here's one, geometric wolf art, kind of like that style. So what we can do, and this is set up by this user for the xTool S1 and 1/8 inch material, but there's nothing interlocking here, so we should be able to use this with thicker material if we want, and we should be able to scale it up. So I'm going to go ahead and open this, and we're going to start playing around. Now I'm going to be using the P3. So we're going to first want to come up here. We're going to switch devices. I'm going to select my P3. I'm going to go ahead and switch that out. Okay, so now we've got the working area of the P3, and we've got the artwork brought in here. And so now, since we have so much more working area on the P3, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. All right, so we can scale it up from here. First thing we might want to do is lock our aspect ratio. That way, when we drag it, it's not going to skew or stretch it in either way. If you have this unlocked, you can definitely get some weird results. I mean, maybe you want a really fat, short wolf, but we don't want that. So I'm going to do Control-Z to undo that. We're going to come up to lock aspect ratio, and now we're able to drag one of the corners, or if we wanted a specific height, say we wanted it 24 inches wide, or which would be tall in this case, we could do it that way. And it automatically sizes it to scale what we want. But I have, you've got about an 18-inch high by, 36 inches wide working area on here. So I'm going to bring this up to, let's say, 14 inches wide, and that makes it about 30 inches tall. That is a very big wolf, but we've got the material for it, and we've got the working area on the P3. That's one of the beautiful things about the P3 is we've got all this working area. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pop some material into the laser. We'll get that updated into Creative Studio or xTool Studio here. Then we can start with our other settings. All right, so I have this piece of birch plywood. It's got a thin birch veneer on here, and the inner parts look to be maybe some poplar and whatnot. I believe I got this at Menards here in the Midwest, and it is, let's see here, it's about 4.7 millimeters thick, so not quite quarter-inch material, but it will be a little bit more durable than the 1/8 inch at this larger size. So I did, in a previous testing, run a material test on this one, and we did get through on this one going up to even 30 millimeters a second at 80% power, but knowing the nature of this plywood, it's sometimes inconsistent in the middle. I'm probably going to back that off to say about 24, 25. We're going to use this test from before. We're going to get this dropped in the laser, and we'll get the final settings set up in xTool Studio. We'll see how it does.
Here we see the beauty of the automated tools of the P3. We can just drop this in. The camera overhead will take a shot. We'll close the lid, and the sensors are going to go ahead and measure the material. It's going to measure the frame, and then it's going to come back and do a final focus test on the material. And then it's pre-focused, ready to go.
I see it has brought that material in, and now we can take a closer look at everything. One thing is nice here, you can kind of see we've got a few knots in here, and so we probably want to avoid lines over those areas. So it's missing it there, it's missing it there. Just kind of giving a good look over. We got one down here, so we may want to see if we can maybe bump it that way. That gets this one off that area, keeps these in the middle of those chunks, still away from that one. One of the nice things about using this camera, we got one there, but it'll be okay if it stays in the middle of that. Yeah, I think we'll hopefully be okay with that one. That's one of the nice things about using the camera and the positioning. Now we could stretch this out a little bit more, trying to maximize this out, but like I say, 30 inches is plenty big for this. So what we're going to do is, I already have those numbers, so we're not going to worry about changing our material here, but we want to go at 80% power. We're going to go 25 millimeters a second. I am going to bring the focus descent down, and in inches, we're going to go 0.0625. We want full airflow. We don't need tabs for this one, and we will stick with constant power. But it can, you know, if you turn on dynamic power, what this will do is, as it gets to the corners and slow down, it will actually lower the power. So if you're running at full power in this straightaway here, but it needs to slow down, make this turn, it will actually bring the power down, which can reduce the charring in those corners, but it can also increase the risk of not fully cutting through. So a lot of the lasers have that built in automatically. Here they give you the option of the two. I'm going to be doing a light sanding on this afterwards anyway, so we're going to leave constant power on. Like I say, this material can be a little bit inconsistent, so we're just going to roll with that. But once we have that all set up, we're happy with all of this, we can go to process. This will give us an estimated time. We've got 13 minutes, 12 seconds to cut this out. It does want the nozzle in. We do have that. I don't have the fire suppression gas cylinder, so we are definitely going to be monitoring that. Other than that, it is basically ready to go. We just got to make sure our airs, my venting system's on and good to go, even though it's got the IF2. I want it to actually pull it out. And yeah, we'll send this off to the laser and see how it cuts.
taking advantage of the corner camera to be able to monitor this, but we'll also watch from the top. And this has the stock medium lens in here, which is cutting through this plywood fairly well. We will take a look after it's done to see how well, but we're just watching to make sure those spots drop out as we're cutting through. So we'll watch out for any of those areas that like to pop up, make sure that the laser head isn't going to pass by them, and we'll see when this is all done.
All right, we popped out all the parts. I do have a few that are stuck just by little smudges there, probably just some imperfections, but I think the bulk of the outside is cut out, feels loose. So I think I am gonna call this good, and we'll just flip this over. I'm guessing I'm just gonna have to use an X-Acto blade to get through some of those spots. I could try rerunning this, but generally when I see these spots, that's usually like a little glue pocket, and you can try running over it multiple times. You may or may not get through, but you're often just going to char up the other wood. So I think we'll be able to clean this up with just some minimal effort, and then we'll be able to move on. This did pop out nice and easy from the backer, and as you can see on some of these, it's like right here, we just have a small section there that we need to get through here, just a couple of fibers. So I think it was the right call to pop this out. As a matter of fact, this one looks like it's just gonna pop free. And so all I'm gonna do, you can use a hobby knife like this, or if you've got like a box cutter, you want a fairly sharp one, you can just on the back side here, kind of score through that line where that imperfection is, and generally that will help pop it out. Like so. And we're just going to complete that on all these to finish cleaning this up. All right, so just a couple minutes of cleaning out a couple of those trouble spots, and we've got this all cleaned up. I think it was definitely better than running a second pass, which would have taken more time and could have risked getting some of these misaligned. Yeah, it's good to have a couple of razor blades on hand just to kind of cut through that back in case you have a few imperfections, and get that cleaned up a little bit easier. So next thing I'm going to do is I want to sand this down lightly. I'm going to use my random orbit sander with about 180 grit. We're just going to clean up kind of the areas where there's just a little bit of that overburn from those spots. And then I think I'm going to add just a little bit of maybe a stain to this. Since wolves tend to be gray wolves, I do have a nice kind of weathered, kind of a grayish stain. I think that's gonna make this look nice, give it a little contrast on a wall. So we'll do that, and then we can let it dry while moving on to a second project.
A good random orbit sander is a great tool to have with laser cutting. It allows you to lightly clean up areas, but we're just very gently floating this over the surface and letting it work through. You just want to be careful not to catch the edge of the plywood or rip your sandpaper.
All right, I have this Verathane. It's weathered gray. I don't need this to be too dark. I've got some darker gray ones, but just going for, you know, a light gray on this one. So I'm just going to be applying it with a foam brush, and then I've got a paper towel that I can kind of wipe it off. So we're just going to go ahead and start adding this on. I want to get it on kind of even, and then wipe off any of the excess. Of course, this is, you know, wall art. It doesn't need to be perfect. We don't need it to be completely even. We're not like painting walls. So we'll just get this applied and then see how it looks when we're done. So stay tuned.
I'm trying to apply a nice even coat, but also keep a wet edge. So after I get a little bit done, I go ahead and wipe off the excess and then keep moving on down. And when we're all done, just going to go ahead and wipe away anything that's extra, leaving just a nice wash.
All right, so this is what I was going for. Hopefully that shows. Otherwise, I'll try to do an overlay. I wanted it to have a bit of a gray color, but I wanted it to be more like a wash or a stain. So some of that wood grain comes through. You still kind of see those natural fibers of the wood, And so that's why I kind of gave a light coat and then wiped it off right away. I didn't want it to soak in too much, to get too much contrast, but just a little bit of more of like a wash on there. So we're gonna let this dry. We'll let that kind of get all cured up. And in the meantime, I have another project that's gonna be along this theme that we're gonna cut out. So for the next project, I want to make one of the multi-layered designs, and I'll show you that in xTool Studio a bit, but I'm going to be using this true flat material. I've used this a number of times on this channel, and I really like it for things like this. So they recently came out with a new variety, and that is cherry, which is one of my favorite hardwoods to work with in my more traditional woodworking. Cherry and walnut. Maple, they add a nice contrast. And so we have cherry, we have our white and our black, then we have oak and maple, and these two they're slightly different. They're hard to tell the difference on these, so we may just use one or the other in this one. And then of course we have the dark walnut. So, all right, the next piece of art that I want to work with is this layered forest bear. Again, kind of keeping with that theme of kind of outdoors wildlife type stuff. So this is a multi-layer. I think it's about 5 layers in total. And so they're using a combination of different colors of wood. Looks here like they maybe use some light stain to still let the grain come through. We've got the true flat plywood. So I have the black with the base, and I can engrave those. I did run a quick test on the black, and as you can see here, this was at 20% power. This is at 30% power and 600 millimeters a second, and we are getting kind of that MDF core coming through without being burned, so it leaves a nice effect. I may even slow it down just a little bit just to ensure that we get as clean of a engrave as possible. We're just still seeing a little bit of the kind of the black, not quite coming through on the bottom. But that'll be good for that bottom layer. And then we can look at these other layers. I've got the walnut, which is a darker color. We got the cherry, which is kind of a reddish color. We've got then the maple and the oak, which are 2 lighter colors. And I do have the white paintable or true flat. So we could color that with some markers, or I could swap out some Baltic birch plywood and use some water-based stain to kind of give that muted but colored look. So I'm gonna get the files set up, we'll start cutting them out, and then we'll look at how it goes all together.
The laser did take a little bit to engrave that, but it is cutting out nice and cleanly. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure that pops free, and it does. But we do need to clean up that engrave a little bit. So let's run over the air compressor, and we're gonna just blast out those little engraves as best we can, get any of the extra residue out. And then we're going to run to the workbench, and we're going to use a little bit of Windex to clean this off, and just a kind of a terry cloth here. You don't want to use alcohol because that can actually frost the finish of true flat. So just a light cleaner like Windex works really well to clean up those edges. Not 100% perfect, but good enough. We're going to go ahead and move along with our other materials. So starting out with the white, we're going to go ahead and get that cut out. And this is the one that we're going to try to color. So once again, these do pop out nice and cleanly. I believe we're running these at 25 millimeters a second and 80% power. All right, we're also going to do the same cleanup method, being careful of those fine details. And then after this, I'm testing the color. This is the green acrylic paint marker. That was a little... I didn't like the color. And then the left side here is the Transtant. This is a water-based dye. Just was kind of coming out a little too bluish with that white. So went ahead and recut this piece out of some Baltic birch plywood. And then that should soak up the dye and give it a nice kind of evergreen tint. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Set this aside to dry. With that all done, we can go ahead and cut out the other pieces. This is part out of maple, and then we're going to do the next layer out of that black walnut, and then our top layer out of the cherry. All right, so I have these kind of laid out in order in the fact that this one will glue up onto there. This one will glue up onto here.
and then this one will go on the end, and then of course this one there. So we want to kind of put these in order of how we want to glue them on. I'm going to start with these two, glue them together. We'll also then glue these two together. Then we'll bring the pairs together and then finish off the last one. My glue choice for this, I want a little extra time, so I'm using this Boss Dog glue. It's like a white PVA glue, but it dries clear, which is great. It also works down to temperatures of 55. Now I made sure the bottle was kind of near the heater to warm it up. It does get a little cooler in the shop than that, but I do have it up to about 65 here. So we shouldn't have any problems with temperatures, but in the wintertime, just be mindful of that. Now, if I was doing a lot of these, I would probably set up a jig. We do have the advantage that the feet are all flat, so to some extent you can kind of use the tabletop to help align them. But what we're going to want to do is make sure that we can get them aligned. You want to kind of double check your outside lines as well. You really want that edge to be nice and clean and smooth. And then we're going to put some weight down to kind of hold everything down. Don't need to get too fancy. I've got a couple quarts of stain and paint, so we'll be able to use those with that as well. And outside of that, it's just a matter of making sure we're only putting glue where it's going to hit the back. So you want to pay attention as you move through these, how that's going to work. Now, anything here is going to fit onto that and be fine. We just want to be careful with these trees that we don't get a lot of squeeze out. But again, partially that's why I'm using this glue, because it does glue dry. So just go ahead and I'm going to start putting a bead down on this one. We want to make sure it is glued around the edges as best we can, but again, we're trying to minimize that squeeze out. This will give us some time to clean things up. You could use CA glue or super glue, but you're going to need to make sure that you have that kind of, when you lock it down, you don't have a lot of time to really reposition. So this is a little bit slower method, but it'll give us a little bit better bond and should work just fine. Okay, now I am going to just kind of spread this around a little bit just so that I know that if there is an excess, I can get rid of it now rather than when it squeezes out. It'll just make the cleanup a little bit easier. Spread it around on these trees a little bit. Again, I'm going to stand these up, kind of line up the feet. And when I'm happy with that, I'm first going to focus on that back side, making sure that's held down, and then I'll get some more to weight down this. And we'll let that set up for about 20 minutes. With the first pair clamped down by the paint cans, I'm going to go ahead and get the second pair glued up, spread those around, rinse and repeat with some paint cans, and let those dry. Once they're all cured, about 20 minutes later, we can then join these two halves together. Got to be careful just to get glue where it's going to mate up, and then go ahead and stack the paint cans back on, let that cure for another 20 minutes. Then we can come back, get this top layer on, rinse and repeat, spread the glue around, get them lined up, let the paint cans rest. All right, so I finished both projects, and they both came out pretty well. This Wolf one was just a basic cutout out of some 1/4 inch plywood. The cut operation on this took about 12.5 minutes to complete. I did have a little bit of cleanup in just a couple of those glue spots, and then I did the simple kind of gray stain, just a real light wash over here to give it some color, but also, like I said, I wanted to leave some of that grain showing. And so once I get this up on the wall at work, it's got a white wall, this should have a nice pop. And I'm probably just going to use some of the command strips. They've got a few different hooks that are kind of almost translucent or invisible, so I'll probably just be able to hang that up on the wall, and then facilities won't be too mad at me for doing any damage to the walls. Then the second project being this multi-layer bear cutout. This is 5 layers, mostly of the true flat wood. That worked out pretty well, although I did swap out the white for some Baltic birch, so that would absorb that green tint a little bit better and give me the color I was looking for. Of course, the most complex and time-consuming one was the engrave. That layer took about 12 minutes. Each of the other layers were between 3.5 and about 5 minutes, so Total time on this, the cut time was about half an hour of machine time. And then of course I had the glue ups, which I needed to let cure in between. So there's definitely more time and labor into this. And it is going to factor into whether you're making these for people, selling them. You're going to want to factor that into your pricing as well. But the multi-layer aspect of it definitely makes it a lot more, it's more impressive. It's going to have a better standing and such. And so the price should reflect that if you're looking to do these kind of things on your own. So hopefully that was a little more on the xTool P3 and its capabilities. The Wolf, almost 30 inches in height, definitely kind of pushing more of that larger work area. But the CO2 laser, the 80 watt, really slicing through this material with ease. If you have questions or comments about this, go ahead and leave those down below. If you're interested more in the laser or any of the materials and supplies I used, I'll try to put links in the video as well so you can check those out. Some of them will be affiliate links, and that does go to help support this channel. It will help me continue to do more projects like this, hopefully inspire you. But as always, just happy to give you some good information to help you use your equipment, use your tools, be inspired to make some projects on your own. So anyway, thanks for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, or I hope you just had some fun. And we'll see you in a future one soon. But I hope you get out into your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.